Hello. I understand that we are between you and the drinks.
Yeah.
So we'll try to keep this lively, and we promise not to go too far over, but definitely want to give some time for your questions as well. So we've got 45 minutes total, and I'd like to talk to these guys for about 15, 20 minutes with some of the things that I have in mind, and then open it up right away to questions. So thank you so much for being here, and without further ado, let's introduce Seth Farbman. He's at the far end there, the global CMO of Gap. Roel de Vries.
Perfect.
All right. The VP and Global Head of Marketing Communications and Brand Strategy for Nissan. And Rajamannar, who is CMO to MasterCard with a full 3 weeks under his belt now.
And that was perfect, too.
Oh, good. So I'll be sure to drill him about the nitty-gritty of the company as much as possible.
Thank you.
So I've just come from a show where we spent most of the time talking about and waiting to hear about whether the US government will shut down at the end of the day. So I apologize if I have that on the brain. And I don't know if that necessarily dovetails with the theme of what we've been talking about today, except I can't help but just kind of put it out there right away and ask the question about whether US politics is interfering with the brands that you're trying to build. Raja.
OK, that was not part of the prep. I'll try. See, obviously, all the industries that I have been in, whether financial services or healthcare, they are pretty deeply connected with the government regulation and the policy. What we can earn, how we can do business, how we cannot do the business, what the boundaries are. It's all so closely linked to it. I think within financial services, you have the Durbin Amendment and things like that, which have become quite a contentious issue at some point in time. Likewise, same thing with the healthcare industry. So I think it's not unique to one or other industries, but I guess, yeah, the government's policies and the political framework, it matters quite a lot. And
I understand that anytime you ask, is the government in your way, the answer is most likely to be yes. But that said, you mentioned financial services in particular. This is an area that has probably, only US Congress could probably make financial services look popular by comparison. Is that a struggle for you?
So I would not say a struggle. In fact, government can be a very, and I'm not making a political statement, government can be a very good partner. And when you look at it from a global company's point of view, you're not just focused on the US and the US politics. You have got around the world. For example, I know MasterCard, I think in the last few months, they have had a partnership with the government in Nigeria, as an example. The government has said that we need to really include people who are otherwise not having access to the financial services. And so those kind of areas, you can really have the government support and help in stimulating demand for the category that you are in. And it can be very big help.
Sure.
And I guess by nature, government has to be regulating. They have to make sure that what they believe is good for the people they have to implement. And sometimes always there is this kind of a pull and a push that happens. Each one is trying to optimize from the point of their own vantage point or perspective. And I think that's a natural tension which exists all the time, but that's not necessarily unhealthy.
Roel?
I think government impacts everywhere. I think on all industries and on all brands. In short term, I can't comment specifically about things happening at the moment in the US, but I think consumer confidence in the automotive industry is hugely important. We are one of the first industries to react when confidence goes up or confidence goes down. So from that point of view, of course, there is direct impact, whether it's in the US or anywhere in the world where that happens. But the other part, and I must agree, is the partnership with government is quite important. In our industry, whole categories, whole segments or type of vehicles either disappear or grow depending on the regulation or the direction that governments set. So I think working in close partnership with governments is key. And there's positives and negatives. It's just a matter of working together.
Yeah, and I'm thinking in particular of fuel standards, which is one area where we certainly have seen big changes coming out of government that have a real impact on the kinds of cars that you guys even can make. So in some ways, they are dictating a brand to you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's dictating, because it goes hand in hand, because there is technological development that quite often is coming out of automotive manufacturers that governments then pick up, and then they realize that they can push the regulations further. So I think some of the issues that we deal with globally are common. I mean, there is a scarcity in resources, and there is a need to protect the climate. So there is a drive in everybody's interest to make transportation different to what it has been in the past. And we have that interest, the governments have that interest, and every new regulation is an opportunity. As long as you are one of the first to go, and maybe you can even create the segments. So I see it more as opportunity than as a negative.
Seth, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, the government doesn't really dictate how skinny our jeans are. So, not maybe in the sense that you guys have, but I mean, look, it does affect the consumer. It does affect people. You know, their focus on their families and their lives, and so any kind of distraction is never wanted. So in that sense, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
We're an optimistic brand too, and so we like seeing things in an optimistic view.
Right, and I think that goes back to the heart of a lot of these strategies, which are to try and kind of send out a message and take advantage of what seems to be an improving environment in terms of consumer confidence and whether they're using financial services, buying cars, et cetera. There are some common themes here, and just to go back to Interbrand and the survey out today showing the most valuable brands, a lot of you guys have made progress over the past year. Just to go down the line here, Nissan came in at number 65. That was a 25% jump from last year. MasterCard makes its debut, I think, at 97. It's up 8%. Gap rounded things out at number 100, up 5%. So Roel, I guess, you know, we could say that your brand is seen as the most valuable of the three up here, if you'll allow me. Why do you think that is?
Well, not in comparison to other brands, but first of all, I think automotive brands have done well in the rankings because the industry is coming back. So I think we had growth in line with some other manufacturers. If you look at pure brand value growth, we've done well because I think what we're starting to see is that some of the initiatives that we started as a Nissan brand are starting to resonate with people, whether it's our drive in zero emissions with a vehicle like a Leaf, which has made quite a big statement, but also the fact that as a brand we are growing at the moment everywhere in the world. So we've got quite consistent growth everywhere, and that's coming through in some of the numbers. So this is the third year in a row that we have grown strongly, and I think it's reflecting our drive in what we're doing with our vehicles and the various markets where we sell. And
it strikes me that if you are a car company, a retailer, one of the things you can almost very easily do is put out a new product and therefore reimagine or very quickly send a new message to your customers. With financial services, it seems to me to be a lot more tricky because while it's about new projects, it's also to some extent just about customer service and satisfaction and those things which have troubled great companies time and time again. So how much do you invest in that? How much, Raja, is that part of your strategy or is it not? I mean, are you looking at new and innovative ways to improve your brand's standing? Yeah,
2 quick points before I answer exactly what you're saying. I think MasterCard was also in the list last year. So this was not the debut year, and and when you look at, you have got tens and thousands of brands out there, making it to the top 100 in the studies does make you feel sort of pretty good. Second thing, I'll start with a disclaimer again. I have been with MasterCard for all of 3 weeks. So if I'm talking very authentically about what we are doing and how the brand is sort of, I'll give you some context, okay? And I thought I'll do that. One of the key things is, MasterCard has invested a lot in technology over the years. It has got one of the most sophisticated technologies out there in the payments industry. And the company has invested tremendously in the brand. And investing in the brand is not just in isolation or in a vacuum, but it is in the context of understanding its consumers and giving them the kind of experiences that they would want to have. MasterCard kind of companies are a little bit in a tricky situation in the sense that we don't directly deal with consumers. We deal with consumers through the banks that are our actually key customers. So that makes it extra challenging, but at the same time, it's also very fascinating that you are joining hands with somebody on the other side who they bring a set of unique strengths to the table we bring, and collectively you can really do fantastic stuff. Talking on experiences, I'm sure most of you in the room would have seen the Priceless Cities. Which is all about giving experience to our customers, to MasterCard customers, consumers basically around the world. where they go to some popular destinations, whether it is New York or it is Beijing or London, etc. So you've got priceless Beijing, priceless New York, priceless London, etc. And we try to create a whole set of unique experiences for them, which they cannot get by paying money or by doing anything else. All they need to be is a MasterCard customer. So we try to focus on those kind of things. I know it sounds like a big advertisement for MasterCard, but the thing is, this is a fact. And
why do you think it is that, okay, so Visa came in at number 74, you guys are at number 97. How do you close that gap? And I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room who are looking at competitors whose brands are perceived, you know, better than theirs or whatever, and saying, how do you change the message? Is it just about getting the message out there?
See, I think there are 3 very important steps. The first thing is they have to get the right CMO, which they just, okay? So that's the first big step they have done. So the second part is, after that, you just got to be smarter than competition, right? It's not about the scale. Yes, Visa has a much larger scale than what we have, but in terms of what you bring to the consumer, how well you understand them, how well you can partner with your banks, and with the governments, and with the, you know, and we are also not just doing in a commercial sense only. We are sort of trying to, somebody in one of the earlier meetings were talking about how you attach yourself to a cause. Like Stand Up to Cancer has been one of our very successful campaigns where we are raising money for cancer. Every time customers, they use their card and things like that. It's been working brilliantly. So you can do lots of smart things to get yourself close to the consumers. And I'm pretty, this is my charter, I guess, to really help the company go to a next level. And our competition is not really Visa or anybody else. If you look at the whole category, cards have, the payments have only penetrated 15% of total transactions. The biggest competition we have, 15. So for every $100 that is spent in the category, only $15 goes through a credit card or a debit card or that kind of a payment, yeah. So therefore, our big competition out there is cash.
Yeah.
And so that's what we are sort of going after.
Poor cash. I don't know.
Indeed, I know.
Fighting for it. Seth, I'm curious because it seems as though actually relative to cars, financial services, technology, retailers have had a hard time moving up and cracking this list. And when I look down, basically the top retailer, at least as Interbrand defined the category, was Amazon at number 19. Then you get eBay at number 28. Kind of similarly, in a similar vein, you have McDonald's at number 7, Disney number 14, although they're restaurants and media. You know, the first apparel guys, really straight apparel guys, are H&M at number 21, Zara at 36, and then it skips down to Ralph Lauren at 88 and Gap at 100. So in terms of your space, you're in the top 5. Why do you think it is that retailers are having a harder time moving up overall?
I don't know. I think that there's obviously a bit of a lower barrier to get into retail than some other businesses. I think that there's a lot of competition, a lot of expansion as well. But for us, you know, I'm not really even looking at the relative term, but our brand has increased 5% value. That's outstanding, and it's really why and what you've done to get there. And I think the lesson here is, you know, what I'm especially proud of is we've improved the brand by being more Gap, by actually going back to the roots of the company, by not looking for a different business model or looking for a different positioning, but reinforcing that, and then looking for more places to share that. So when I look at retail, and where I get excited is, I mean, we're on our way to 80 stores in China this year. We just opened our first store in Brazil this week. There is incredible runway and an openness to American brands. And so for me, I just see this as an opportunity to get really, really clear on what you stand for, what your proposition is, what your belief systems are.
And what is that for Gap?
We're an optimistic brand. We are an American optimistic brand that is rooted in democracy and inclusiveness and in a sense of endurance and fairness. And what's great for us is if you want to think of us as a middle brand, we'll take that. We're not fast fashion, very disposable, and we're not high end, where you know when you're buying into high end that you're really paying more for that logo. But this core consumer that is just rapidly growing everywhere around the world as really the middle class expands, has the very same values. How do I improve my life? How do I improve my children's life?
But this is crazy. I mean, we're talking about genes fundamentally, and you're saying in order to be successful, you have to convince people that they're buying not genes, they're buying into optimism and the future and the hope of self-improvement. I mean, that's an incredibly loaded thing to have to do in this day and age.
That's a brand.
Yeah.
A brand is a point of differentiation. And a brand is a set of beliefs that must be aligned with the company's beliefs. And if you really believe in certain things, you will execute time and time again. Product will be better, service will be better, experience will be better, all through that same lens. And the customer will respond. It's very complicated out there. There are many, many choices. That's wonderful. It's also very, very difficult for consumers. So the clearer you are, the more emotional and the more you share values, they'll be open to whatever it is that you want to share with them. And that's a brand.
Yeah, just one more question down the line, and then I'd like to open it up. That's kind of to go back to the theme of what we're purportedly talking about during this session, which is, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities for a CMO in today's digital world? I know we just heard from Qualcomm as well, talking about the ways in which devices are so quickly going mobile and how that's impacting the way that we consume and see brands and think about them all the time. So just Raja, first to you, I mean, what has changed today and what's going to change about your strategy with MasterCard now, that makes it different from what you might have done 5 or 10 years ago?
See, one of the first things is look at the age profile of the three folks on the dais here, right? Keeping yourself contemporary on a day-to-day basis. Digital space is evolving so crazily, right? Staying on top of it, staying in a contemporary, cutting-edge kind of a thing is going to be very challenging. I think that will be one of the first tasks which I would see in this changing world that every CMO owes to himself or herself and to their company to keep themselves up to date. I think that's a huge thing, not to be really. The second part of it is getting the talent. It's a very different mindset that you're talking about as far as the kind of folks who you want to attract for the digital or marketing in the digital space or digital marketing, call it whatever it is. And their aspirations are different. Their stickiness or loyalty is very different. Their competencies are very different. And I think you need to be able to sort of have your cultural adjustment in the company so that you're able to attract these kind of folks and then retain them. That I think is a very big, these are, how do you say, really the table stakes for any company to be successful going forward, I think. And of course, you have got the technical aspects of digital marketing, which in themselves are, okay, how do you sort of in such a highly fragmented scenario where things are changing by the day, how are you actually allocating your budgets? On one hand, you have got the traditional media where things are all proven, so to speak. You know what kind of returns to broadly expect and what kind of impact can be done. Whereas here it seems that for far lesser investment levels, you can accomplish a phenomenal and a more authentic kind of impact thanks to the social media and all these things. And earlier, the gentleman from Qualcomm, Anand, he was talking about how the 3 screens and how it is all ubiquitous and what kind of experiences you can give. I think you really literally feel like a kid in a candy store. You don't know where to start because opportunities are just everywhere. The key is to not get distracted with the toys, to understand clearly what the linkages are to your every single investment dollar to the kind of returns that you get, and have a purposeful, well-integrated strategy that cuts across all kinds of channels that you want to leverage to reach your consumers effectively, and also give them the consistent experience. So when you're having a very sophisticated experience on a mobile, but when you look at their TV ad or TV experience or an in-shop experience, if it is very traditional kind of a thing, there are some kind of a disconnects. How do you make it seamless and tonality-wise it's consistent? I think it's phenomenal kind of challenges, but also I think opportunities in the space.
Ro?
Yeah, many of my comments would be the same. So if I would add to it, I think what we're seeing is a massive amount of technology going very fast, and it's creating opportunities, like you say. I think the challenge that we as marketeers have is how do we creatively and from a messaging point of view utilize those platforms to still get that same simple integrated message to the audience? Because I don't think people want things to be more complex. It's actually the opposite. Technology is creating a world in which consumers expect things to be very simple. Yet we as marketeers at the moment have now so many challenges, so many options, and in big corporations like ours, everybody starts doing things all over the place, and we actually quite often creating the complete opposite. We starting to send our messages via many more platforms than we've ever done before, and we send many more different messages than we ever sent before, and I think we're struggling to integrate it. I think our agencies need to understand better how to integrate all these messages into what we do on the creative side. And we as corporations need to be much more clear as to where we want to send our money, where we want to invest. Because at the moment, my fear is that in many places, people do everything because it's sexy to do something with Twitter, and it's great to do something on... It's great to do something on Facebook, it's great. The bottom line is, yes, consumers expect you to be there. But it doesn't mean that they expect you to do something very clever and weird and new and unique every single day on every single platform. And that's sometimes my fear, we are doing too much. So I think we need to understand the technology and then find ways to still get very consistent, simple messaging out there. And personally, that's what I think is the biggest challenge to the marketeer at the moment.
Simplify. Seth?
Yeah, I mean, there's something I call shiny object syndrome that sort of permeates, especially the marketing world, and it is a bit of a feeling of wanting to innovate, not wanting to get left behind, and it can be a distraction. And you know, what I really look at is not so much what is the technology of the moment, but what is useful, and how are people receiving their content, asking for content. And what is the content that is native to that platform? It's a little bit of another stupid marketing buzzword that's going around now. There's no shortage of those. But I think it's important. You shouldn't take a TV spot and try to shove it into a social media channel and vice versa. And so it's really taking yourself out of your marketing head for a minute and really just saying, what do I have to say? Is it interesting?
Correct.
Is it simple? And now, how can I tell it in a way that's not disruptive or even interruptive, but actually builds on the experience somebody's having? I mean, we just are in the middle of a campaign for fall that we call Back to Blue, and we returned to television. But it's not television like television used to be. We returned to television because we thought we had some really compelling film content. But if we'd taken a 30-second TV spot and said, oh, great, now we're just going to put it online and look at us, we're integrated and we're digital, we would miss the storytelling and the depth and the engagement. And so we took a TV spot that shows a guy like Danny Harrison, George Harrison's son, performing for the first time ever one of his father's songs. A great deal of emotion in deciding to do it. The image that we share, the film, is something very real and authentic and even a little bit painful in a sense. You see it. And if we had simply taken what is a very interesting TV spot and thrown it on digital, it would do something, but it wouldn't do everything. So you accompany that with interviews, with the decision to actually cover your father's song. He's a Beatle, for God's sakes. What it must be like to grow up the son of a Beatle. And what that process was like. That then is useful to a customer. It's not simply, I'm trying to sell you something, it's I'm trying to share something with you. Mm-hmm. And that's what digital does. That's what social does. It allows you to share much more content, so it's a very, very rich environment.
That's a great example. Questions now from the audience. If you've got them, don't be shy. Yep, back there in the middle. I don't know if we need a microphone or something. Maybe just shout.
So my question is actually Seth about the Back to Blue campaign. So I've been seeing ads for an aspiring singer-songwriter, Alexa Del Rey.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, is what anyway, so basically, you know, she's a young singer-songwriter. I was wondering if that is also targeting like a younger audience, trying to make that like more of a hit brand, or if
Yeah, I mean, Danny Harrison and Alexa Ray Joel are the center of these two films. And it's a great question. If you didn't hear it, are we targeting a younger audience with this talent? And the answer is yes, but what I really love about it is we're actually cross-generational, right? And that's one of the things I love about our brand. We're a cross-generational, multi-generational brand. You know, we go from like 1 day old, which we do really well, all the way up to, 100 years old. And so, these spots, they take what is familiar to some of us, Billy Joel or George Harrison, and it puts it into a context of today. And I just think that the relationship between parent and child is universal, cross-generational. Doesn't matter when you grew up, you all had those issues, challenges, hopes, dreams, all of those things. And by sharing that in a very sort of public way, I think you're getting at lots of things. You're getting at that relationship, you're getting at musical influences, you're getting at what it feels like and what it's like to be current today. So we try to do everything. And that's another lesson of marketing. I think it's try to look at your content and try to do as many things as you can with it so you're not just overly niche and targeted. The human truths, they transcend everything, and those are actually the most impactful.
Can I ask as well, to you guys, especially Raja and Roel, is that need, that desire to be current that Seth was just talking about, something that's uniquely American, or does that work everywhere?
From my perspective, I think it's universal. It's absolutely universal. If you look at some of the aspects, they want to preserve the tradition, but at the same time, from a functionality, utility, etc., they want to be very contemporary. And of course, it's all very segment specific. There is no one universal truth for an entire population in any given country. But if you look at it like the common principles, the common aspirations, the common areas where they would like to preserve and stick to the older times, from whatever be nostalgia, whatever the reasons they have, that does exist. But overwhelmingly, I think there is a desire to actually have the latest and the best, and they want to evolve, they want to keep up with the times. And the emergence of global media, is amazing. Like, I come from India, and even 10 years back, when I would go to my small village back in India, TV was a rarity. Right now, you see so much of style, literally in those small villages with their mobile phones, and they're going and I wouldn't have imagined 1,000 years that these guys will be actually tweeting and have Facebook accounts, the kind of people who you don't associate those with. So it's fascinating how people are evolving, and I would say it is a universal concept.
Yeah.
I have the same view. I think there's many more things that binds us as people all over the world than that separate us. And one of the problems sometimes in marketing is our desire to differentiate and to split everything up in many things rather than look for what is the common thread. I mean, you spoke about typical American, but it's actually a son of a Beatle, which I don't think he was born here in America. So it's actually very...
That's a great point.
So I think there is a lot of things that you as brands can do that can work as a common thread all over the world. Now, would you use a different, if you decide to use music, would you use different music in Japan than what you use in the United States? Yes, but the principle behind it, the concept, the feeling behind it, I think is still very, very universal.
Questions? Yep, way in the back.
I have a microphone now. Along those same lines, could you talk also about your companies as they're expanding globally and how you create commonality between the brand in these different marketplaces? We heard from Chevrolet earlier today that they've gone to having a single PR firm, a global firm, and also a single global media partner as a firm. So I'm just wondering how you manage, as you're going into these new markets, consistency amongst the brand and then consistency in the messaging.
Yeah. So first of all, I think obviously I found the Chevrolet presentation very interesting to listen to. But I think there's many common things that we have to deal with as brands, and on integration, and that came up earlier. I think that's one of the key elements. We need to integrate everything that we that we do. So in the agency world, because that's your specific question, I always have the same point, and some of the agency people here will know that. I think the agency world has differentiated itself too much. We created niche companies and agencies for every single thing. We as global brands differentiated ourselves too much. We started giving a lot of independence to local operations all over the world. That also came up in Chevrolet's case. So, but the consumer is actually not that different, which is the point that came up just before. So what we are doing is in many respects very similar. So we are integrating our agencies. We need to get one message out to the consumer, and we need to work closely with our agencies, and actually it's a responsibility of our agencies to integrate those messages across all of the platforms all over the world. So we created a team called Nissan United. It is one team, and inside there is expertise from all different areas, which we need, because not everything can be done by one person or one agency, but it needs to be integrated, and it needs to be consistent. In our case, in Nissan's case, we also have to do that in terms of our products and our services and the experiences that we do. Sometimes we think as marketeers that we can differentiate at the end, but we still have a car that was, in our case, designed and developed either in the United States or in Japan. So it is one car that comes down a whole line of development and design, and it's got certain features that come from a source. Then you can't, when you get to the retail environment, to the end thing, go and differentiate that car all different type of ways. So to answer your question, what we are doing now is to bring everything much closer together. One agency, one message, consistent all over the world, executed slightly different. I'm not a fan of the same TV commercial running everywhere. In China, we do something that works for China. In Japan, we do it for Japan. But one message, one consistent theme, and products that come from one understanding of the brand and go down from development right down to the consumer, keeping that truth to what that car is about. So that's what we are doing at Nissan. But I don't think it is unique to us as Nissan. I don't think it's unique to the car industry. It's, I think, something that a lot of brands are going through in a world that is becoming so much more global and so much more open.
Any other questions out there? Yep, over here on the side. Just 1 second. They're going to bring you the mic.
Hi. So each of your brands have made it onto the global top 100 list, and I guess my question is, do you care? And by that I mean, other than going back to your organizations and having something to celebrate, is it something that you actually watch and want to improve upon? Do you actually use it as a measure of your brand health? And if you don't, what do you look at in terms of how do you measure the health or strength of your brand?
Raja?
Should I start? Okay.
And you can please feel free to use past examples if that's relevant.
Yeah, I think that will be more fair in terms of, again, MasterCard is a fantastic brand, but I won't pretend that I understand it, and I'm still having an earful when you talk of listening. So for the last 3 weeks, that's exactly what I have been doing, and hope it will continue for some time. But in general, again, I used to manage Citi at one point in time for their credit cards, for their marketing globally. And similar kind of situation, similar kind of issues and all that. What I find particularly unique about financial services, and I have spent time in other industries as well, so I can say that, is there seems to be a much higher sensitivity to the amount that you are spending and the returns that you are getting. Because typically a kind of a player bank or a financial institution has got finance people. So they are really focused on that, and per se, therefore, in the marketing function, there seems to be a very, very high level of focus on saying that, okay, I'm putting this money, what am I getting in return? What kind of metrics I can have? It's easy to come up with fluffy metrics and for 1 year get away, but then it catches up next year. And if you change the metrics, people will question you. Last year, that was the baseline. Now let's use the same set of metrics and don't try to game the system kind of a thing. But I think from the point of understanding what kind of investment we need to make, understanding what kind of impact we need to create and measure it in financial terms, I think is one discipline which has been very much there. And that cannot happen unless you really understand your consumers deeply. And for a high involvement product like a financial services, understanding the nuances of the consumer's emotions, feelings, their drives, and what their aspirations are, everything, I think it becomes extremely, extremely critical. And so consumer insights, whether it is research-based or data analytics-based, it becomes critical. And that's one more area, which is data analytics, which is, I think, a lot more unique to health and financial services. You got a ton of data about your customers. Like in credit cards, for example, every single time the guy is transacting, he or she is exhibiting a behavior which you can capture and come to some kind of conclusions in terms of what motivates individual, etc. I think it's pretty fascinating. And my experience is that I think both healthcare and financial services have got that extra edge compared to the other industries that I have been in.
And to that point, I'm curious as well. I mean, big data is one of those buzzwords that we hear a lot about, but is also such an interesting trend. Is it becoming easier to figure out who that customer is in some of these markets, as opposed to having to rely on research or maybe local anecdotal familiarity in the past? Or do you feel sometimes that there's just so much noise that it's hard to glean a signal?
No, I think right now the entire evolution in the data space is so phenomenal. What you can learn about is really amazing. You of course have to make sure that talking to your first point of government regulations and the privacy of the individuals, you have to be highly respective of it, and you have to be, otherwise you'll get wrapped on your knuckles. So you got to be careful about it. But having said that, I think the opportunity today is absolutely stunning. The extent of analysis, like for example, in one of the previous companies, we partnered with IBM Watson to understand, and Memorial Sloan Kettering was one more partner in that whole deal, trying to figure out how you can understand the consumer's regimen vis-a-vis in a situation where they have got cancer. So you're trying to help your consumer in ways that are also very beneficial to your bottom line. So it's a win-win kind of a thing across the board. And the opportunities for those, particularly I think in the last, I would say 5 to 8 years, it has started, and it's sort of going on a geometric proportion. Pretty phenomenal.
Just curious, Seth, to his question as well. I mean, when you open a store in a place like Brazil, is that so you can say, yay, we're in Brazil? Look at us, we're global? Or how much pressure is there to perform right away?
Yeah, well, I like saying, yay, we're in Brazil. I mean, that's exciting. There's always pressure to perform. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Brazil is part of a very deliberate and very aggressive global expansion strategy for us that's led by Gap brand. So there's no there's no victory laps, as my chairman likes to say. You move on, you keep doing, you keep trying more and more and more. And to be on a list, I mean, it's a list. We all like being on lists. You like them more if you're going up and less if you're going down. But we're in this world now where you can get real-time feedback on how you're doing. So I launch in Brazil, and by close of business, I know if I had a good day or a bad day.
And?
Oh, we had a good day. Yeah.
Just curious.
We're going to open another store. And that's really rich. You don't get the analysis with all of that data. That's the trick. There's always been a lot of data, and there'll be more and more data. Much like the internet, there's no shortage of information, but there might be a shortage of knowledge. It's converting it into insight. That's the trick. So we spend a lot of time now trying to understand what's the underlying factor and what people are saying about us. Do they like us more? Do they like us less?
And why, yeah.
And why, yeah.
Did I see a question right here? Yep, go ahead. Just give it 1 sec. It's coming down.
Hi, I've got an interesting question because we've had a lot of people speaking today, and no disrespect to you, Seth, but a lot of people seem to be from the international market. And you would normally see, well, you would think that the US is obviously like the hotbed of marketing, of innovation, and so on. Why do you think so many CMOs who have come and talked to us today are not from America?
I did notice that, though. I will give you that.
I actually don't know if it's coincidence. It could be coincidence. I'm not sure if we are statistically representative, coming back to big data that we just discussed. But what I do think, two things. First of all, I'm based in Japan and I'm Dutch. I I still do believe that most innovation, or a lot of innovation and thinking in the world of marketing is coming from the US. So I still think the United States is leading in so many aspects. I do think at the same time, the reason why I think a lot of international people are sitting in jobs all over the world is because you cannot, I think, do a good marketing job if you don't understand a bit more of the world than your own country. So in other words, if I would only know Holland, I cannot do my job. So I think you will find more and more people, whether they are American or Dutch or Indian or French, that would have worked and lived in various places of the globe. I think you ideally should understand a bit of the emerging markets, of course ideally something of the very developed United States or Europe, and something of Asia. So my read on it is not so much that they're non-American or not European, but I think more and more you will start seeing people that when they were younger have taken the step to step out in the world and experience different cultures and different ways of doing business.
It's a great question. We only have a couple of minutes left, so I'm curious as well, I'll start with Seth, what the first thing is that you read or look at is when you wake up in the morning?
What's the first news that I look at?
Or first thing. I mean, I don't know what news is anymore.
CNBC, of course.
Okay, great answer. Maybe the second?
The truth is I use Twitter as a news feed.
Okay, so Twitter first.
So yeah, I scan through because I can simply look at what's trending. I can look at a bunch of different news sources, and I dive in that way, and then I move into sort of my normal morning routine.
Would that include other web-based social media kinds of things, or do you then kind of turn to a newspaper or to television?
Yeah, I mix it up. You know, it's BuzzFeed, and then it's New York Times. Not necessarily in that order, right? It depends. But absolutely. And I use them for really different purposes. I digress for a second, but I do find you need 2 and 3 different news sources to get really proper analysis of the day's events. A lot of times when I read one, I have more questions than answers, right. But that's just sort of my nature, I think.
Roll?
Yeah, actually, I do slightly different. I get coffee and I open a traditional newspaper because the moment I switch that thing on, my day, my day is gone. So
how do you logistically have a newspaper every morning?
It arrives at 5 o'clock in the morning at my door. So now I try to start the day.
Is it the
with
local press where you are, or do you have a?
It's in Japan. It's actually International Herald Tribune, which I think is the New York Times international publication. And then I think after that, I think like all of us, into our emails, into news feeds. So I get my Google alerts of anything that happened on Nissan, and the point is, the moment you switch that thing on, the time you switch it over is when you go to bed. So yeah. I try to postpone that by about half an hour in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Raja?
I guess I start off my craziness early in the morning with multitasking. So it's simultaneously listening, of course, not seeing but watching, but listening to CNBC, getting my shaving and all done, and also finishing off my emails. I try to sort of accomplish all those simultaneously, and it's been happening.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
It is indeed.
Leads to some problems. No, but I ask because ultimately I think what all of you as well are after is how do you get in front of people these days when they first wake up or when you are trying to reach them during the day. I think it's a question that whether we're content creators or marketers that we all grapple with, and it sounds like there unfortunately isn't one easy answer. That we really are at the vanguard of multiple screens or multiple medium or whatever you want to call it. So getting that simple message across remains the challenge on all those different formats. But please join me in thanking our panelists, and thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Charlotte.